So are we going to make it a priority or are we not going to make it a priority? Budgets are funded off of priorities. I will say that we haven't made it a budget priority. So the staff came back last year and asked for over $1 million just to try to get us close to the state average. Right now, it's, with the $3.6 million a year that we spend, we're on about a 37-year trend to fix the streets. The state average is 25. Best practices say 20 years. So I asked, are we making it a priority? How do we find the money? Well, we make it a priority. If we can spend, we spend money on consultants and we spend money on different things, and those are small pockets of money. But if we make it a priority and fund those priorities first, not last, not when it's an afterthought, we fund them first, that's how we're going to fix our streets. It shouldn't take us 6 years. It shouldn't take us 8 years. It shouldn't take us 4 years. We need to make it a priority today. We need to make it a priority with this next council. The city manager is shifting the way that he's doing his budgeting process. He's going to do more program-based budgeting. That will allow us as council and as mayor to say, these are our priorities, how are we going to fund them? We have to ask them the hard questions and say, let's find the money. Are there unallocated resources, or there allocated resources out there as far as dollars that we haven't spent that we can reallocate them to streets? The citizens have said it is a priority. Now we as council and as a mayor have to make it a priority, and we have to fund it. We can find the money. We just have to look hard and make some hard decisions that sometimes are uncomfortable, but that's what elected officials do.
Mr. Reagan, how do we improve this schedule of street repaving, and if necessary, where does the money come from?
We might could beg some money from Joe Riddle. Some of these big pocket money people in Fayetteville, I don't know. But unlike a lot of other people, I'm not willing to have my taxes increase to pave these streets. If we never paved them in the first place, we wouldn't have to be repairing them. Same thing with sidewalks. They become an eyesore. Over 1/10 of the world's surface right now is covered with an impervious surface. Nowhere for the storm water to go in those areas, but to pile up and run off and create issues. So we need to be a little more thoughtful on where we put, streets and stuff. You got some land where the water is dissipating. Don't go in there and asphalt it. Where the money's going to come from, I agree with these other counties. There's money there somewhere, and we need to find it and reallocate it to paving these streets. Thank you.
Matt Roberts,
Repeat the question for me.
a lot of streets out there. How do we improve if we do the schedule, and where's the money come from?
One of the easiest questions, I believe. Because first thing I would do is look at duplication of services. How many city streets do we have that get dug up, come back, get patched, 6 months later come get dug up again, patched by the city or by PWC or whoever the utility may be? Let's look at combining duplicated services. So everybody's talking. Engineering's talking to engineering. Let's look at construction, combining construction. Everybody's talking. They're all sitting in the same room, cubicle, hanging over the cubicles and all that kind of thing. I think that's where it begins, is communication and elimination of duplicate services. And we can do that ourselves among the city and PWC. That'll give us a little bit of money. The other thing we got to look at is PWC's assets have increased by over $250 million since 2007. Thanks to a lot to you people sitting in this room. So I think the other thing we need to do is we need to call on PWC to pony up their part. And look, I always believe private enterprise can do it better than government. If PWC and what they do can do it more efficiently than what the city's doing, let's give PWC construction. Let's give them the engineering department. Allow us to use them. This can save money. We can use their assets to come back and do the appropriate repaving of the streets that we need.
Paul, you heard the question. What's your answer?
Thanks, Jeff. Well, most of you people, I guess, here were annexed recently or opposed to it. The city bit off more than it could chew. It wasn't because they wanted to repave your streets, and it wasn't because they wanted to give you new bus routes. We know why. We know why they're going after PWC. It's not so that they can consolidate. They make it, talk consolidation comes up every year. It sounds good. PwC is running pretty well without city council involvement. It's a goose that's laying a golden egg, and they want that golden egg. Politicians, what we do best is spend your money. Okay, none of them's talked about any of the other things that they would cut of least priority. I would tell you that law enforcement's top priority. Second is going to be streets and roads. They don't mention what's third, fourth, and fifth that would have to be funded because you're adequately funding law enforcement and streets and roads. That's because you lose votes. Anytime you start talking about those particular issues. One would be Parks and Rec. I just lost a bunch of votes there. See people shaking their head. I've got 5 kids. I want them to enjoy the Parks and Recs as much as anybody else. But at the same time, I don't want to be in this city if we're going to have one of the worst crime rates. I don't want to be driving down the roads if they're going to be in bad shape. If they're going to be overcrowded. If we're going to have traffic jams where you can't go down the roads. So it is a priority issue. I'm glad to hear that word. I believe it didn't hear it start coming up until we talked about raising taxes for the police. It should be funded first, just like the police, streets and roads. Funded first, and you'll have adequate funding. Then what you won't have adequate funding is for everything else in the budget of least priority. If Parks and Recs is more of a priority than streets and roads, then there will be no discussion on that. It will be on streets and roads. But if streets and roads is more important, then the discussion is how do we fund our Parks and Rec and how much. It sure isn't by continuing to annex and annex and annex. So you have to get spread out so thin that you can't take care of any of it. Thank you.
I may have misspoke, but let me ask, do we want to go with the infrastructure questions or go right to the audience? Okay, all right. At this point, then, if you have a question for the candidates, we're going to ask each one of them to respond. 2 minutes, but ask your question as briefly as you can. To stand, identify yourself, and I'll recognize you for a question. Yes, ma'am.
Sharon Valentine, we have been told by the chamber consultant that we can expect more downsizing at Fort Bragg in the next several years. The war is ending, military downsizes. Val spoke to a specific program, Hire Fayetteville, that would create jobs. I would like the candidates to speak to just one program that would address the downsizing, that would create jobs and the tax base within the community.
Well, Sharon, you answered my question. You gave my response. I'm a big believer in we have to start with what we have control over, and it's obviously our own tax dollars. We, the city council and the mayor, can control where that goes. We can partner with the county to do the same. We can partner with Cape Fear Valley to do the same. We can partner with the school board to do the same. Use our tax dollars here and have transparency in the community so small business owners or business hopefuls know how to go and get that money. That's part of what Hire Fayetteville First is, keeping our dollars here. Hopefully small businesses can expand and benefit from our tax dollars and hire 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 more people. Or maybe a business can start up based on our tax dollars. It's not hard. We can go to Raleigh and lobby them, we have to. We can go to DC and lobby there, but I'm talking about what we have control over here, now, today. We voted unanimously to approve Hire Fayetteville First. We have not implemented it fully. When I am your mayor, that's day one. I don't have to figure that out. I'm going to start with what I know we have control over. That's my program.
With the next response will be from Mr. Javier, telephone or microphone. Just pass it on down the line very quickly.
Hey Sharon, that's a great question. And I just want to vocalize my support for Hire Fayetteville First. I've talked about it before. I believe we have to invest in our local businesses. we've got to take the government contracts that are out there, whether it's county, city, PWC, and we've got to invest them back. At the end of the day, that's the way we invest in small businesses, the way we get our tax dollars to kind of circle around. So we have to make that program work. But I will tell you that, it was passed several months ago. We need to implement it. We need to look at the 8-point item that the city council passed, and it needs to be implemented. And that's the difference between, a good city and a great city. A great city is one that can actually implement and execute on things. And that's what we need to do. We need to begin to look at that program, and it is a job creation policy, I believe, because it creates local jobs. But there's another component to it, and we talked about it earlier, and this is from outside in. So that's one program that if we execute it, I believe it will create some jobs, and it will allow small businesses to create more income off from the tax dollars, and then thus creating more jobs. But at the same time, from the Gardner report, it identified other segments. We have become less dependent on the military as sequestration continues to happen, although it's lessened, as it continues to happen, and as the downsizing of the military happens. We have to look at these other industries, and we have to continue to invest in them, and we have to continue to recruit them, and we have to have a specific program for how we're going to do that. The Alliance has it, the Chamber, as part of the Chamber, the city has to be a partner in that and has to continue to be a partner in that, because we have to recruit these other businesses so we can diversify our economy a little bit. That's what's going to make us stronger, not that reliance. But what we can do in the short term, so that's the long-term job creation, the short term, we have to implement that higher Fayetteville first. And we have to take those 8 points and implement them. You look at Match Force and some of the other programs that were on there, we haven't done anything. We have not done that much yet, I should say, to implement those points. So we have to have some short-term fixes and some long-term fixes, because job creation is not a pop-up overnight. It's a long-term process.
If I recall, the question basically was, given the possible downsizing of Fort Bragg, what more can we do to encourage business growth, create and develop the tax base further?
Sure, and I'm not trying to shortchange your question, but these two candidates over here are a hard act to follow, and they've pretty much covered about all the bases that can be done. So I'll just go pass the mic on to my colleague, Dan.
Thank you. I think first of all, to jump back, we have to make it easier for businesses to do business. They can grow organically if we do that. Secondly, we need to look at our outside organizations that are there to help do that. Sylvia Ray operates a nonprofit called Seed, which actually does seed startup money for businesses to help individuals that want to get started at a very low interest rate. So we need to look at our partners as well, but we can do what we need to do by making it easier for businesses to do business.
Mr. Williams.
The best way to increase our tax base, especially with downsizing Fort Bragg, is to quit encouraging our young soldiers to go to surrounding counties. Polk County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country. How could that be? They're able to afford the same size home, cheaper cost, or a bigger home for the same price. When they go to the surrounding counties, businesses follow. There's traffic, people set their shops up on that traffic. That's how they get business with signage. Just like politicians, how they get elected. You gotta have a sign. Signage is very important. We got so many rules and regulations. It's just like if we invest in more cops and they're doing speed checks. The solution is the radar detector. That's what our Fayetteville First is. Okay, if you're the lowest bidder, I don't care if you're from 10 buck to, we as a city government have a responsibility to use the lowest bidder. I can't understand this protectionism. Okay? What we're saying to all the surrounding cities, counties, don't go there, hire us first. They're going to do the same thing. That's all you're doing is asking for protection. And we don't need it. We need competition. We need freedom. It's pretty simple. Okay? I don't know how many ways of explaining it. Soldiers will stay here, but we've got to have affordable housing. County building codes, state building codes are sufficient. We don't need all kinds of hurdles for people to jump through where you lessen the competition and increase prices of homes. Thank you.
We'll begin the following series of answers from Mr. Deviere, but do we have a question? Bill?
I do.
Hold on, we'll get the microphone to you so everybody can hear it. This one right here. Well, I saw this one.
Well, I thought you were.
I heard sorry. Give me a minute. You got your light right there.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. My name is Leon Frank, and I'm a resident of the community here for over 26 years. And in terms of a few comments that I wanted to throw out to see if you have any comments of what I have to say is like realizing from C-SPAN in reference to the closing in reference of the cutting down of services. C-SPAN reports that our bases that are left with the BRAC are actually going to get bigger. Yeah, and the people that stay here in Fayetteville that are retirees, it's 20% of the population thus far. And that's 20% of retirees that get out that have small business loans. They should be coordinated and encouraged to start things and utilize their small businesses because the Fort Bragg, whatever is here now is serving the Fort Bragg community. And there's a whole bunch of technology that comes here with the Fort Bragg community. And it is true that, according to C-SPAN, that there's going to be more general staff officers here and then staff second only to the Pentagon. Then, having been there, I just draw a circle of a 100-mile radius, and I know people travel back and forth from at least 100 miles to work every day to work at the Pentagon, which would encourage, to me, rail traffic to go as far as Raleigh, connecting from here, connecting the road networks from the I-95 corridor, and then reaching out into Sanford and all these places and trying to get a rail network that would be very necessary in the middle of the 21st century. I've seen it already in Charlotte, as many of you have probably seen, that Charlotte has grown exponentially over the years, that their highway system that was once good 30 years ago is not good now. And I think they're trying to do that, do something. And I know, looking at anybody that works in that Pentagon area, they take buses to a certain place and get on trains. And I'm like, maybe that's something to think about in terms of adding to how we jumpstart this community with that. That's my comments, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Someone have a question? Bill, you're next.
Thank you, Bill Bowman. I'll be coming weekly. Many of the candidates have already mentioned that the city is not very business friendly. However, there is a perception that many of the residents of Fayetteville feel that the city is not resident or citizen friendly, making it very difficult for them to communicate with the city and to get, their business done. So my question is, do you agree with this assessment? And if you do, what would you do about it?
Start with the person. Doing business with the city.
Well, I think it's actually from the citizens' approach. And Bill, thank you. I know you are definitely a man about the town, and you talk to a lot of people, so probably a very insightful question. And you also, again, if you go back to the citizen survey, March of 2013, one of the things they talked about was how the city communicates with the citizens and it's being receptive. I will tell you that I believe that it starts with something that's basic in business that I run and other businesses I've worked with. It's customer service. Whether you're dealing with businesses or you're dealing with citizens or people like you out here, there has to be a customer service aspect to it. They have to be user-friendly, they have to be responsive. They have to remember that, and it starts from the top all the way down. It starts from the city council being responsive. It starts from the city manager pushing it all the way down on the customer service level, so that when a citizen calls, it's not about no, what you can't do. It's about yes, how can I help you? It's a basic premise of business, customer service. How do we help the citizens and how do we communicate with them? Now, to your specific point about communications, there's a lot of ways that you can communicate with citizens. We have to find the best way to communicate. Is it a website? Some people don't go to a website. Is it email? Some people don't use email. Some people say newspaper. There's television shows now. There's different ways that we need to get out and communicate with citizens. That's why I believe organizations like this and other community watch meetings are so important, because one thing I learned in the military is you keep your boots muddy. And that means that you listen to people and you hear what's going on. Part of the community watch ability is another way that we as staff communicate. I've watched these crime prevention specialists really become the face of Fayetteville, the face of City Hall, because they're answering all these questions. They're the ones that are actually communicating with the citizens, because when the citizens are calling the city, they're not getting the answers that they want, or it's taking longer than they need. I think we've got to turn again that dynamic of customer service and say, we need to remember who we work for and we need to be responsive to those citizens. And it starts with basic customer service. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you. Please, etc. It's basic customer service.
Mr. Reagan, doing business with the city.
I try not to. Bill, I really didn't comprehend your question.
No, the question was that many citizens don't feel that the city is resident-friendly, making it difficult to communicate with the city and get business done in the city. Do you feel that way? And if you do, what would you do about it?
Yeah, well, I definitely have an open door policy and a quick response time. You don't have somebody come ask you a question and then tell me you get back to them. That's ridiculous. The only thing I found ridiculous was I went to the police department downtown at like 1 o'clock in the morning. It was closed. Why? Why was the police department closed up when I wanted somebody to come over to the bus station. I know this is not answering your question, but I was having a little issue with the guy at the bus station. I went across the street to the police station and there was nobody there. What do how do you get a policeman in the middle of the night to fail? No, yeah, we do need to be very open and responsive. The response time is what drives me crazy. When I have an issue and I go down and nobody gets back with me 3, 4, 5 days later, yeah, it irritates me. So no, yeah, just be open and very responsive. Respect the citizens.
Mr. Roberts, doing business and communicating with the city.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Well, not only to make the city more user-friendly, I'll give an example. A few years ago, I went in to get a permit for a garage sale. And a young lady was sitting behind the counter, looked up and went about her business, never even acknowledged. I think one of the things that we deserve as citizens, as taxpayers, when we go into City Hall for service, I want to be treated like I'm walking into Macy's. How may I help you? Look, that doesn't take a lot of effort. Maybe some basic customer service training. I think we need to go there. I think the other issues we have with our city government, you have to have trust and you have to have transparency. And with those other two things, I think, let me give you an example. How many of you are having to finance your PwC extensions? Okay, thank you. You're being charged 8%. 8% by PwC in the city. This is not user-friendly. Let me tell you, when you get a home mortgage for 4%, you're paying twice, 3 or 4 times what the bank pays for their money. So with current assets in PwC in excess of $8 million, there's no reason in the world why we have breached your trust and your transparency charging you 8% on that money. That's absolutely ridiculous. We need to return to basic city services. That will also help with the user-friendliness. Let's get out of the business that private enterprise can be in. Let's maintain basic city services. And thank you.
Williams.
Thank you.
Well, when you annex as many people as y'all know we annexed, and you get stretched thin, it's hard for them to do business. I have what I call the Taco Bell approach. We love serving. We don't have to steal their exact quote, but we're here at Fayetteville, we love to help you. How can we help you today? With a smile on their face. But when they've got so many things on their plate, they got so much going on, so much city to handle, it's not that easy. I'm not saying they're overworked and underpaid, but I guess I am. So whenever you are contacting, probably the best thing to do is if you have a problem with the city, is send your council member an email. They'll send it to the city manager. The city manager will then send it to their staff. So, I mean, that's gonna be the simplest way to fix that problem. So, you'll always have that problem, I don't care where you go. You can even go to a local business, you might find somebody who gives you bad service. So that's gonna be something that you'll always run into. You just need to keep a smile on your face and just know who their boss is and talk to them. And that would be my approach if I run into a problem dealing with the city. At least we have to deal with them, the better.
Ms. Applewhite, communicating and doing business with the city.
Thank you. Forgive me if I sound a little defensive of our employees, because we have hundreds of employees that get up each and every day that do their best to serve the citizens of this community. Can we do things better? Absolutely we can. But I want you to know that our employees work hard every day to do their best. A lot of ways to communicate. You know, I love getting the emails, but I'd like for citizens to perhaps start off with that 4331 thing to report their concerns. And if that doesn't work, of course, get back with the city council members. But I do my best in the line at Food Lion, at the rec centers, just walking around the city when people ask me questions about how to navigate this machine. And it's amazing, once people understand how to do it, it becomes easy. It's like, call me back, try this, let's see if the system works. And if it doesn't work, that gives me the opportunity to go back and do what? Tweak it. Under our new city manager, that's what he's doing right now. He's scrubbing the processes. He's making sure we're efficient and we're effective. I had a citizen say to me, "Now, if we ever get a police substation out western Fayetteville, why don't we put a PWC sub-office in there? Why don't we make it a mini city hall where we don't have to drive 17, 20, 25 miles to get to City Hall, where people can walk in and find solutions to their problems?" There's a whole lot of ways we can become more effective. But it does start with citizens telling us how we can do a better job for you. But sometimes we think we're getting it right, but until you tell us we aren't, you know, things don't change. But it's your voice that makes things better at City Hall.
Okay, we're going to try to keep the mic up here. I saw this hand first. Sir, if you wouldn't mind, just stand up and ask your question. Keep the mic up here, sir. We'll hear his question. Let's let the candidates have the mic, or we'll be spending all day moving the mic around.
This is an easy one. Some of us believe in doing business locally, and so my question is, as you buy your campaign materials, are you buying those from local merchants, or are you going out of state or out of town to do business with the city?
Are you purchasing locally? Let's start with Mr. Reagan.
Folks, you don't have to worry about me, because I'm not advertising. The only way that I'm going to get elected is going to be an act of God. And you vote for me, because I don't advertise, I don't want your money, I won't spend your money, so you ain't got to worry about me if I ever do get elected raising your taxes. So, no, you will not see any advertisements from me, and I didn't buy any out of town. But if I did, I would have had them made local.
Mr. Robertson, you buying locally?
Everything, yes. I'm thinking with the exception of my signs, and then I went up to Benson to do that because I don't know anybody locally that produces the yard signs. So that's yes.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
I have not bought any yard signs, but if I did, I would be efficient as possible. I'm not going to pay more for signs when I can get more signs for the same price. I mean, that would not be prudent. So I would encourage everybody to do the same thing. If you can get something cheaper, the same product, whether it's in town or not, then I would suggest doing that. Competition is good. Freedom is good. And I really believe that we need to be looking at that more than are we buying local. Again, that's more protectionism, and that's not what made this country great. It's not going to make the city great either.
Whatever expenses you have in politicking, Ms. Applewhite, are you spending your money locally?
I've done a combination of them, both. You know, I'm still fundraising, so if you want to go to buyapplewhite.com. My t-shirts are coming right off of Bright Boulevard, a wonderful young man who has a t-shirt printing business. That's where I am. This wonderful piece right here did not come from locally. I fell in love with the design of the piece. So this didn't come from Fayetteville. So it's a combination of both. I don't have yard signs yet, but they're coming. So that's pretty much the answer to the question. But most everything I do is local businesses, and you'll get to see my T-shirts here real soon. Thank you.
Mr. Bedier, are you buying locally?
It's a great question, especially what we've been talking about today and doing business locally. My marketing materials do come locally. So I've made sure I've tried to spend my dollars locally the best I can. But I think it speaks to a bigger question. And it's a bigger question that there's been some conversations around, and that's building capacity. So is there the capacity to have all these services here local? And not just when you look at the campaign sign, but when you look at services that are provided locally. So when we talk about the city and they're trying to hire architects, or they're trying to hire lawyers, why are we going to Charlotte? We've got to build that capacity here in Fayetteville. So forget about the campaign signs and campaign material. I think there's a bigger question to ask, and that's how do we build this capacity? First, we've got to identify it. So where are the shortfalls? Do we need more lawyers? Do we need more architects? Do we need more, workers based on the needs that are across our city? How can we fill that capacity? Because that will speak back to Sharon's question in creating jobs. So we've got to look at the capacity issues, and I think that's a bigger question that we have to look at so that we can create jobs around those capacities. But to answer your direct question, I would say 90% of what I'm doing, all my marketing materials are coming locally. There are some things that are not here, like software and things like that I cannot buy here locally.
Next question. All right, sir. Oh, ma'am, or whoever it is. Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Sir, my name is Tony. I have a question.
Speak up, please.
I'm 15. I'm a sophomore in high school. And I've seen the violence in high school. And I've seen it growing up in the community. I was wondering what you guys can do for us since we're not able to vote and you guys will be making decisions for us. I was wondering what you guys do as kids.
I'm not sure I heard the question.
Violence.
15 years old violence.
Dealing with violence in high school? Okay. Charles, let's start with you.
I mean, I'm sorry you're having that issue, but we've got some problems in our schools that need to be addressed. The SRO officer at school is not enough, really. I'd like to see some parental volunteers help go in and, a program with some concerned parents that are willing to get involved enough to help address these issues actually in the school, to help protect your kids. That's basically what I like to see.
Violence in high school. Let me make an observation for what it's worth. The Cumberland County Sheriff's Office is responsible for providing law enforcement in all of our schools, including those in the city. That's by agreement with a former police chief. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way it is.
Well, and the school system itself is governed and financed by the county and the Cumberland County School Board. I'm sorry you're having that problem in the school system, but I think globally, if we look at the issues, it starts elsewhere. It doesn't start in the school system. It starts at home. It starts with parenting. It starts with the education of the gangs. It can go anywhere. I'm sorry you're having that trouble.
Well, that's a tough one for city council or mayor. That's something that we would not be able to address as far as directly. But just my personal views on it, I think we've kind of taken out the ball whenever we kick kids out of school for maybe drawing a handgun, but yet kids that are being bullied, the kid that's doing the bullying gets to stay in school. I think there needs to be zero tolerance for the violence or bullying. And I think once kids know that there's no tolerance for it, then you'll find they comply. They'll only do as much as they can get away with typically. So obviously, I'm guessing that it's tolerated a little bit more than it should be. And I would just encourage you just to report it to your teacher or principal if there is someone that is acting out. Thank you.
Well, here's the mic.
Thank you. Young man, I applaud you for being here. I think we sat next to each other at another community meeting. I think I remember that. There is something that we can do as city council and as a community. I've been working with county commissioners, representatives from Fayetteville State University to try to find solutions for young people. What we determined was that, I'm a little old school, I'm 52, and the solutions that worked for me when I was a teenager don't work for you anymore. I can tell you that with my 15-year-old and my 20-year-old. So what we have to do is really understand your issues. We can't offer our old school solutions to your new problems. So how do we do that as a community? We work with our nonprofits. We get you guys together in different formats where you're free to express your opinions and your concerns. And then we get smart people that are listening to what you're saying and translate that and then find the solutions in our community and connect you to those. So instead of getting in trouble after school, maybe have an interest in repairing cars. Maybe we find that out about you, that you have nothing to do after school. So maybe there's a car dealership or car repair place. We can connect you to something that you value and give you options and opportunity. That's what we can do.
Kurt?
And again, just like some does, I want to thank you for coming out. It's sad though still that we have to have one of our youth come to a meeting like this and talk about crime in the school. I was at a community, I believe it was a community crime prevention meeting across multiple community watches, and there was another 15-year-old boy stand up and ask Chief Medlock a similar question. Why is there gang violence in my school? The sheriffs are the ones in the schools. They are the ones that are responsible for that. But as a city, we can't just be in our silo and say, hey, that's your problem, because it's all of our problem. We've got to reach out to the sheriff and we've got to say, what are you doing and how can we help? What can we do? What resources can we bring to bear? We have to solve this as a community. We just can't say this is all your problem or our problem. We have to, in limited times or in times of limited resources, we have to find ways to bring resources together. And maybe it's, in some cases, the sheriff helping the police department. Now, I can't speak to your specific issue. There's a lot of programs out there that work towards engaging youth, but there's youth councils, there's different things that I've heard Chief Medlock talk about. We need to look at some of those best practices from other communities. But you're right, you're a different generation than all of us up here. And that generation listens, communicates differently, and they respond differently. It's understanding how to interact with your generation, and that's something that we need to look at. And that's not something that the mayor or the city council is going to do, but we have to look at those organizations like the nonprofits and other organizations that are in place to do that, and we have to work together, but we have to ask the question. So I appreciate you coming here today and asking us a question, because unless you ask it, we don't hear it, and we don't know, and that's what it's about. So again, thank you for coming out, and thank you for taking the time today.
We'll be wrapping up in about 15 minutes. I see this hand over here, sir.
Panhandling is a problem in this city. And if you're in a certain group of people, you can panhandle without a permit. Safety is an issue. We don't control where these people panhandle. If elected mayor, will you disallow people to panhandle unless they have a permit?
Thank you, sir.
One group.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the city council recently passed ordinances dealing with panhandling, but as this gentleman, I don't see that it's being enforced. Let's begin with Mr. Roberts.
Let me add something.
Hold that out, Mr. Bridges wants to chime in.
There may be reference here to the fact that if you are soliciting for a church, you do not have to have a permit. So that may be part of your question.
I think we know what he meant.
I thought you did too.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Mr. Robertson, we'll start.
Well, I do believe that there are ordinances on the books as far as what's restricted. One of the things that I think is kind of odd, you see folks standing in the middle of the road selling newspapers as well. Well, that comes from state statute that allows newspaper sales in the middle of the road. Panhandling, I do know that there are ordinances, and I think it probably comes down to not wanting to enforce the ordinance, but prioritizing calls and that type of thing. I could be mistaken. There could be police officers that don't willingly enforce it, but there are ordinances on the books. I would encourage you to call and report it, and at that point it's on record, the police officer has to take action.
For clarification, and Bill, you chip in if you need to. Churches are not required to get a permit to put people out panhandling. And I think that's wrong.
Okay. Call.
Do you? That's the question.
The church,
I think panhandling's been around probably since the early ages. I think we're always gonna have it 4 months, just possibly begging for money. The best thing I would recommend for you to do is not to stop and give them money. Keep your window rolled up and ignore them and keep getting it. I feel sorry for them. Some of them look at it as a job, and if you continue to give them money, they're going to continue to stand out there. They're not going to continue to stand out there if it's a waste of their time. Obviously, people are giving them money and feeling sorry for them. If you want to give to the poor, give to your local church. As far as permitting goes, the city is panhandling for more money. As far as I'm concerned, what's the permit? The city gives cities some money, and you can go out there and give more money. The city really needs to be increasing its tax revenue by increasing its tax base. And they're not doing that. They're discouraging economic development. That's why they're doing the annexation. That's why they're going after PWC. That's why they're proposing new taxes. Okay? I'd suggest you hold onto your wallet because the criminals are not the only ones at it. Doing the panhandling.
After this, we'll have time only for one more question, probably. We'll get it from you, sir. Panhandling.
I'm not quite clear on the church piece that you were talking about, but since I've been on council, I was one that voted for the panhandling ordinance. And our city attorney, Karen McDonald, she has a hard time with us because after we passed it, I'm like, Karen, you're still on the streets. You gotta do something. Well, she says, there's this free speech thing in our country, and she winds us back in. So I did support the ordinance. Can we do better? Yes. Do I see our police officers pulling people over? I live off of Cliffdale Road, so on Cliffdale and Skyboat. At any given time, you'll see the panhandlers there, and I'll see the police officer roll over and take them away. But, our officers are busy. Like they drive past panhandlers there. Yeah, they do. So maybe it's more enforcement that is needed. But I say that we need to just start giving the money to people and maybe they would kind of go away. But we're working on that. It is a deterrent to businesses as well, but we're working on that.
Kurt?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the question is, why should churches be allowed to panhandle without a permit when no one else can?
I can't speak. I know churches are non-profit. They have a different status. I just don't have the information about that. It sounds like a legal issue, perhaps, and I'm not familiar with the requirements for churches.
And I think she addressed that component of it, so I'll just speak to the panhandling portion of it, because again, I can't speak to the church component of it. But one of the things that you hear chiefs say a lot, and you hear a lot of the lieutenants and captains of this community watch, and they're calling for these service calls. Well, if there's an issue with a panhandler, call 911. Now, that's going to put it on the books, and that's going to create service calls. We don't want to, use resources, but at the same time, that will help us identify if there is a problem in a certain area. I will also tell you that, as a business owner in downtown probably has one of the larger panhandling areas because is where you see it. It's a hindrance to businesses, but as a business owner, you have a responsibility to pick up the phone and make a phone call. If you ask them to leave, they can leave. If they come and you bring a police officer out there and they continue to hinder, you can have them removed from your property. So it's incumbent on us as well, on all of us individually, to work the panhandling program. To work to solve the panhandling problem as well. It's not just on city council or on city staff or on the police. You know, the other point of this is there are some people out there that need help. And I just don't think you can always, to everyone, just roll up the window and say, you know, no, I can't give you money. You know, there's a difference between giving somebody a hand up and a hand out. And I think sometimes we have to look at that and we have to say, does this person, you know, need a hand up? And there's nonprofits, again, great nonprofits across our community that will help those kind of people. And I think we have to direct those people to there. We can enable them and make it a job. That's not the kind of job creation we want, Sharon. We don't want to have it a job for them, so we want to help them. Drive them, you know, push them over to a nonprofit and let them get help that they need if they need it.
Our final question from the gentleman on the back down the aisle.
My name is Quentin.
Need to speak up, sir, so we can hear you.
My name is Quentin. I'm a local. I was born in Cape Fear, so I'm a local. That being said, there's been a lot of talk about job creation and all, but the only time Fayetteville State was mentioned was during traffic. That's it. No one's talking about the relationship or improving the relationship between Fayetteville State and Fayetteville. I mean, it carries the name. My question is, even recently, the chancellor made comments, Fayetteville State's new chancellor made comments about improving the relationship or improving the corridor from downtown Fayetteville to Fayetteville State, which is only a 10-mile walk. There was a comment about having a qualified workforce. Isn't that a qualified workforce every year that graduates from Fayetteville State? So my question is, how do you guys plan to improve the relationship and use the people? I have friends that graduate from Fayetteville State and go to Raleigh, DC. We have a qualified workforce. We have an invaluable resource in our city that we haven't even talked about. So my question is, how do you guys plan to improve that relationship?
Okay, let's begin with Mr. Williams.
Thank you. I'd earlier mentioned the success of this country and Hong Kong, and I may have got sidetracked, but the success of Fayetteville is going to be down that same path, and that is economic freedom or freedom. If we don't get economics working in this community, Fayetteville students from Fayetteville State will continue, as long as the same as all the other kids that grew up in this community will tend to find opportunities other places that are growing. We must grow, and the way to grow the fastest is freedom. That's for individuals to have least restrictions. Now, we do need a nuisance ordinance, but we should not apply an ordinance blanketly across the spectrum. We heard earlier about the newspapers being able to sell newspapers on the streets. Why? Because they got influence. They're the newspaper. Okay? They got influence. Well, why can't businesses do the same thing? They've got freedom to sell their papers. Businesses don't even have freedom to put their signage up. Okay? Who has the most to gain if you put a big, ugly, loud sign up? Politicians, look at their sign ordinance. It's less than a page. But businesses got an over 60-page sign ordinance. Very restrictive. City government has no business in your business. They have business in law enforcement, streets and roads, and they're failing miserably. Okay? They have no business in our individual license for transportation and recreation. As much as we'd love to have an indoor swimming pool, I'd love to. But if we're successful economically in this community, the wealthy, someone mentioned Joe Little, will step forward and they will build these places, especially if they can make some money off of it. If not, they will donate. It happens throughout this country all the time. But the more and more we suffer economically, the less you're going to have of that. The more dependent we become on government, the more dependent we become on government. The less economic opportunities you're going to have, the less tax base you're going to have. People will continue to flee the city for other parts that are on.
Applewhite.
I think your question is multifaceted. There's a couple of issues there. First, I'll say that Chancellor Anderson is an amazing leader of the organization. The city does partner with Fayetteville State on many issues. We've been involved with Washington Drive, the revitalization of Washington Drive, and Fayetteville State is a key player in the redevelopment of the Murchison Road corridor. I'll be the first to tell you we haven't done enough there. We somehow handed that off to the chamber to take care of it. I think that's a piece that we need to bring back underneath the city and get that done. There's not a grocery store on Murchison Road, there's not a bank on Murchison Road, so you cannot grow that portion of the city without just basic elements. As far as your workforce, I have a son that's a sophomore there. He's a math and chemistry dean's list student, and he said, "Mama, you know I'm leaving Fayetteville." So I have a special interest in providing opportunity to keep my son home. There's a lot of things that you learn around the country that communities are doing. One example is that universities partner with local governments and local businesses with internships. If you're a resident of Fayetteville and you graduate from Fayetteville State with a degree in whatever, business, partner with the city, partner with the local business, and allow you to, they provide stipends while you learn on the job. And what a lot of communities are finding is that businesses actually hire these kids, these interns. They keep you. That keeps people home. And if you don't get the job, at least you can go elsewhere. What do you have? You have a year's worth of experience on your resume. So I hope we didn't slight Fayetteville State. I don't want you to feel that way, because they're a key partner in the development of the city, not just educational, but economically as well. And it is a crown jewel in our community.
And that's a good question about how do we tie the university systems back into the city. Several weeks ago, you're absolutely right, Chancellor Anderson went down and talked to the Downtown Alliance about the connection point. And I think that's actually what spurred Councilman Chris to start talking about the Economic Development Task Force and some of the ideas that came from that. Over the years I've been in the community where I served on the Chamber of Commerce and led the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations like the Defense Security Technology Accelerator that creates jobs. We partnered with FSU. We partnered with FSU on certain programs. There are private-public partnerships that happen and were born out of those organizations, and jobs were created. So FSU is a critical component. They're part of the North Carolina University system, and we have to look at them. But it gets back to your point about why can't they get a job coming out. It gets back to Sharon's point. We have to create the jobs. The economy has to become stronger before those jobs are going to be available for that graduating workforce. Because guess what's happening? There's other people and a lot more other people competing for those jobs. Some people that have more experience because they've been in the workforce longer. So it gets back to creating a stronger economy. And the university system is a component of that. From training to the entrepreneurial programs that they have out there. FSU has an incredible entrepreneurial program. We have to embrace that. We have to look for ways to take that program and partner with other organizations. Maybe it's SEED that somebody else up here mentioned, or the Chamber, or other organizations to enhance the entrepreneur and work with FSU's entrepreneur program. Methodist College has an entrepreneur program too. How are those two universities working together? Again, we have to get out of our silos and focus on how do we create a stronger economy. Everything rises if we work together. Well, those jobs will be there for that FSU graduate if we create a stronger economy, but we have to do that together.
Mr. Reagan.
Okay, I thought you weren't going to let me answer any more questions. Can I answer that other guy's question first? No, I think it's wrong that churches don't have to have a permit also. And I would not allow panhandling, period. I don't want people approaching my vehicle at stoplight, period. Young man, as I reiterated earlier, we need to get you involved in politics because you may have a future there. As I stated earlier, we have automated ourselves into economic devastation. We're turned into a society that's gotten too lazy to work. Val's doing pretty good over in this spot, so I'm on. But we have literally automated ourselves into a position where there are no jobs. We need to produce something by hand. We need people on assembly lines like we used to have. How do we go back there? I don't know. So we're up against a wall.
I agree. Fayetteville State's probably one of our greatest resources that is unappreciated. I attended classes at Fayetteville State. My wife liked it so much she graduated twice from Fayetteville State. I believe that that area that you're speaking of is going to be the next future gateway for the city of Fayetteville. And we've got to look at what we're going to do once Bright Boulevard gets closed. All that traffic's going to be routed from the Spring Lake side of Murchison Road all the way to downtown. So we've got to work on beautification. We've got to look at economic development. We've got to look at partnerships and what we can do. I think in the past, even back as far as Vic Hackley, we had a very good relationship with Fayetteville State. Throughout the years, we've lost that. And as mayor, I'll bring that back.
All right, I think we got time for one more question. Right here.
I have a kind of a pet peeve. I'm John Decker. We want business to come to Fayetteville. But if I was a business, I wouldn't come to Fayetteville just on its appearance. It's the trashiest city I've ever been in. We have prisoners or people that can do community service instead of the guy that's making $18 or $20 an hour riding the tractor, cutting the grass, has to get off the tractor, go pick up all the trash, and then, you know, that's wasted money. He could be doing a lot more things. Why can't we have the community get behind community service and have these guys at least do something instead of watching TV? So what can we do?
Well, we don't have a prison unit here for one thing, so that's out of the question. We can't ask people in jail to do it because they haven't been convicted yet, but maybe we can figure something out. Let's start with Charles. Let's start with you.
I totally agree with you. There's labor sitting there that needs to be utilized. How would we go about doing that? I really don't have the answer to. But I agree with you. We do need to put those guys out there walking 9-10 hours a day instead of laying up in bed.
I'll make it fast. I don't disagree with you at all. I do know that in the past, when the city of Fayetteville hosted the League of Municipalities conferences here in Fayetteville, we spent a lot of money trying to get our city looking right for our guests. Do you remember that? Well, I think it comes down to priority of funding. And I think we all want a beautiful city, but we also have a responsibility on tax rates and priorities. And we're looking at police officers, we're looking at funding the water and sewer lines out in the newly annexed areas, providing services that were promised to you years ago. We've got a lot of things we've got to look at. Beautification is just one of them.
Paul?
Oh, thank you. There's probably since 1970s, I guess, since Black and Decker Curator came here, we've been doing a lot of city rules and regulations to enhance the beauty of Fayetteville, and it continues to get ugly. To start off, we've got power lines down every major road that are very unsightly, along with those telephone poles. But yet we require developers to put their stuff on the ground because the city government does not have the money. And the builders do. They just pass the cost on to me and you. Or those buyers go on to the next county. If we want a beautiful Fayetteville, my solution has been to have a wealthier community. The wealthier we are, the more beautiful it's going to be. And that comes again from freedom. You're not going to go to any country that is under dictatorship where they have no freedom and see any beauty. There's not much anyway. As far as the clean streets and roads, I thought Bob Harris was taking care of that. We should, volunteerism is key. People adopting roads, but I think that's going to be the way to go. If you leave it up to city government who's failing in everything they're doing, then they're going to fail. They're going to fail in keeping your streets and roads clean. I think once businesses are more successful, matter of fact, as you go down these roads and you look at the concrete curbs, you'll see grass overgrown, but yet city will send out thousands of notices to homeowners that the grass is a little bit too high, but they can't cut their grass on the curbs. But you will see some places like a fire station or a state facility where those individuals have gone out and they've trimmed it nice and neat and they've picked up the grass, same as I do in front of my business. I go out there periodically, pick up the trash myself. So it's an individual thing. We can't mandate, we can't pass rule regulation and start sending out notices, sending out the police. Your place looks ugly. People live in front of your place, why don't you got to come? We can't do that. We can't pass a new rule and regulation every time there's a problem in this community. Freedom has worked in the past and it will continue to work, but what we see every time we get a new elected body, they pass more rules and regulations to fix those type of problems, and they only make it worse. Anyway.
Ms. Applewhite.
John, thank you for your question and your many years of leading the Southgate Community Watch for all you do. I don't know how you stay with it now, but I appreciate it that you do. One of the most frustrating things for me is the litter around our community. And you're right, if Bobby Hurst, that's what he eats and sleeps, his Fayetteville beautiful program. The truth of the matter is that it does affect our ability to track jobs here. Our litter index is very high in our city. So what do? Well, you know, sometimes the more we provide, we expand the problem. Our bus stops now that we put our benches there, now there are more litter there, so our Parks and Rec department has to go up and clean out the bus stops. People, what it comes down to is a word that I said at the very beginning. It's accountability. It's taking ownership of our community. We're a transient community. Not a lot of people stay here. They come and go, so maybe they're not really invested in this community. They're not invested. Well, little bit by little bit. You know, the kids in my neighborhood, I kind of trick them. I turn on the grill in the backyard and I get bags and gloves out and I say, whoever can get the most trash in the subdivision, you get your hot dog and hamburger first. And you should see the kids that run through the community and cleaning it up. My point is that it does come down to a personal responsibility. The city can't do it all, but I acknowledge that it is a problem. It's something that we really do have to deal with. You know, speaking, it's a personal thing. We can't legislate everything. It's personal responsibility as well.
Kurt Deputy.
And John, thanks. It's been great to get to know you on Community Watch. It's one of the funnest Community Watch meetings you can actually go to. They have a great time. They have a good time. So I've enjoyed getting to know them. And that's actually something that they talked about at Southgate Community Watch meeting before. I'm going to answer it two ways. One, specifically to your answer, and I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a judge and I don't understand all the laws, but I do know there are community service hours. And we just need to look to put those in place, and the people that can enforce them need to enforce them, because there's also something called peer pressure then. And maybe that'll help speak to the crime issue and those things as well. But community service hours, that can be enforced and that can be done. So there are some other resources there that can be done. But it does start with, the appearance does start with the community. We have to own, just like we have to own the crime issue, just like we have to own the stronger economy issue. We have to look at the appearance and say, we're going to take responsibility. We're going to go out in front of our yard and pick up. We're going to go out in front of our business and pick up. We have to we're going to go join Fayetteville Beautiful and fix this as one community. Get out of these silos again. Get out of looking at things, in a very specific item and say, how can we fix this together? Fayetteville Beautiful works. We've seen our litter index low. We've seen our city get more beautiful. We've seen that happen. We just have to do it together, and we have to have citizens. I truly believe that the way a community transforms is not with a bunch of elected officials. It's with a community that gets engaged. That's how it happens. That's how we're going to fix the crime issue. That's how we're going to fix our litter issue. That's how we're going to fix our economy. We have to do it as a community.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. We appreciate you all coming. Let's give a round of applause for those.